Hello, my name is Nathan Zachariah, and today we are joined here with Reverend Father Matt Alexander. We're very blessed to be able to have you with us here today just to talk about mental health in the South Asian Christian community in that scope. But if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really glad to be here. It's a really wonderful topic. Honored that you asked me to do it. It's a wonderful thing to talk about, to explore, and I'm glad you have an organization that's focused on this specific issue because it's a tough one. It's a really tough one. Mental health in the South Asian community. It's something we need to talk about more and more and more. So people call me Matt Etchin or Father Matt. Good to be here. So I've been a youth minister here in Dallas for about 15 years. So 16 years now.
I was gonna say, I don't think I knew anybody else that would be better to ask, just because, like you said, he is the youth minister here in Dallas. So we were just talking about how he's seen us all grow up. So it's like this is definitely down his alley. So I guess I'll go ahead and ask the first question. So, how do you think mental health is being currently perceived in the broader South Asian community?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think when you have the South Asian community, there are some stigmas when it comes to mental health. There's a feeling that if I'm struggling with mental health, that's like a weakness. There's something like kind of there's a bit of a shame culture around it as well. And so you take a bit of a shame culture that we have, and then you combine that now with people who've immigrated from South Asia to now America, and you have a Western culture of individualism and kind of this breakdown of community, right, that we have. So you kind of have two things combining to create a much bigger problem than what it was there. So like resources that somebody growing up in the East would have, they don't necessarily have here, right? And here we've got this situation where we've got kind of this combination of both, and it presents a unique challenge and a unique struggle in our community as well.
No, yeah, I definitely do. I understand that, even me, when I go back to India and stuff like that, it's my dad always tells me the story, it takes a village, right?
Yeah.
And here, you go back to India and it's like everyone down your street,
yeah,
they know you, they know who you're married to, they know your cousins.
Yeah.
Here, when I'm gonna be so honest, I don't think I know the name of the neighbor to our right.
Yeah. That's actually a really important issue. I'm glad you brought that up because that's really what we're seeing here is, we live in neighborhoods our whole life. You live in an apartment complex your whole life, and you don't know the people around you. There are people who are living literally 10 feet away from you, across the other wall or whatever it be, and we don't know each other. We don't have community. We don't have connection. And I think what you find in maybe your grandparents' generation, things like that, they grew up in a situation where the community, they knew each other, right? Not only that, the family structure, you had cousins who grew up at your house and who hung out with you. You had aunts and uncles to go to when you were upset at your parents. You had resources that were around you that are there. Now, when we move that into this structure, where it's very isolated, and there's the only time people really connect with their neighbors is on Halloween, I think, right? But then you put that in this context, and you have a lot of people who are just struggling with loneliness, who don't reach out for help, who feel like they're going through life by themselves, right? They feel isolated, and they don't have that connection. And not only that, when you combine that with the shame culture of we need to keep everything in the family. Well, now the family is not this big family connected with everybody else. It's just the people in my house, right?
Yeah.
And that leads to a lot of isolation, right? That leads to a lot of struggle, a lot of pressures of not having the resources that people need to be able to get through the tough things in life, to get through the struggles and things like that.
No, so definitely, and you touched on it in the beginning, so it leads me to my second question about the stigma. How prevalent do you think the stigma of mental health is within the Christian community, and where do you think that stigma stems from?
I think that there is a stigma, especially in our community, of a sense of and this combines with, it's not limited to just South Asian culture, even American culture. What we have is this feeling of, if I'm struggling, that's a weakness. We only want to put on the show that I'm strong to everybody else, that I'm all together, right? But we all struggle. We all go through things. And I think that becomes a hindrance of getting the help that we need, especially when it comes to mental health. People at some level with physical health, they can't deny it, right? Because it's stopping them from walking and stopping them from doing the things that they need to do, right? In that sense. When it comes to mental health, we kind of dismiss that as, oh, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, go pray harder. Oh, go, believe harder. Do this harder, right?
Yeah.
And that can become tough. It moves into families too, where it becomes, if somebody in my family is struggling, like we need to keep it within the family, or like, from parent to kid, if my kid is struggling with mental health, that means I've done something wrong as a parent, right? And then that kind of denial that's there, not wanting that to go out is tough. It becomes tough. It's a tough issue. It's not an easy thing that people navigate, right? So I do sympathize with that in some sense. So, but yeah, like we said before, this kind of further isolation of people, it leads to this, to these struggles kind of being compounded. People trying to go it alone, or feeling like I'm a failure or I'm weak if I don't have this. Especially, I would honestly say, especially in men, that not wanting to talk about problems, not wanting to talk about those, only talking about superficial things with other people, not talking about the real things that we're really going through. That's there.
No, definitely. I'm gonna dig deeper a little bit on that one because I completely agree with what you're saying. But is there anything that you've specifically seen, that maybe affects more of our Christian community, and specifically compared to others, or is it kind of general? Like you mentioned the pray harder, believe harder, but anything along those lines? Is there anything you've seen that kind of we as Christians, as South Asian Christians, have had to?
Yeah, I think that's there. We kind of see things as there, but I'm going to say that that's not the way the church was designed. That's not the way it has been. It may be the way that sometimes things tend to be, but I think what ends up happening is we start to confuse things, right? We are body, mind, and soul. Like everybody has, is composed of all of that, right? And we can't confuse one struggle with the other. They affect one another, right? When I'm struggling, when my body is struggling, my mind, I struggle with my mental health struggles and my spiritual health struggle, right? Let's say I've got, I break my leg. That's hard, right? That limits me. That affects my mental health and that affects my spiritual health. When somebody has cancer, when somebody goes through, a great difficulty and it comes upon them, especially unexpectedly, it negatively affects their mental health and their spiritual health. There is a relation.
Yeah.
So when one is down, it affects the other. So when my mental health is struggling, my physical health and my spiritual health will also be there, right? When my spiritual health is struggling, my physical health and my mental health will also be there. They all affect one another. You can't solve one. You can't have all three in balance by only working on one. So the answer to, if my mental health is struggling, I can't just pray harder. Do you get the idea? You can't only work on your spiritual health. You have to work on all three, right? In order to become a healthy, wholesome person, right? And the church has always been calling us to have that, to live in that balance, to be body, mind, and soul healthy, and then journeying towards the kingdom in that sense. And there will come a time when our bodily health will fail, right? And our mental health and our spiritual health have to be there to kind of pick that up in a certain way. But it's part of the struggle. It's part of where we are. But yeah, I think that can be there, where we think that the solution to everything is only focusing on, we should always pray harder. We should always focus on those things. But that's not a solution in and of itself. If I have a heart disease, I can't just go pray harder about it.
Yep.
It doesn't work that way, right? It's body, mind, and soul, right? We have to take care of these things. And so I think there can be this kind of thinking that, my brain is not part of that. But it is, it's part of my body, right? When the organ of my brain is not working as it's supposed to be working, right? We need to do things about that. We need to go and get help for that. And just as much as if my heart is not functioning the way it needs to be, I need to go find help for that, right? When my lungs are not functioning the way they should be, I need to get help for that. So, and that's how we grow, and that's how we. And part of the Orthodox tradition as well is when we worship, we're worshiping in body, mind, and soul, right? It's not just. It's part of everything that we do. Physically come and we worship. you know, and that's part of it. It's important to the Orthodox Church and the ancient church
Yeah.
to be healthy in every aspect of that.
Oh yeah. I loved your response to that. I think, as South Asian, especially as we know, in the Malayali community as well, we have so many, healthcare workers with completely different professions, and, whenever anybody has like heart issues or something, like, of course, we'll hear everybody say, please pray for this person, but they won't be like, you don't have to go to the doctor, just pray.
Yeah.
Like, that's never dismissed, So I feel like, but I feel like there's times.
It's a both and situation.
Yeah. So I feel
like,
like,
you know they're going to be going through struggles.
Yeah.
You know they're going to be going through this. They do need prayer.
Definitely.
But they also need prayer, and support as they're going, and walking hand in hand. Go to the doctor.
Exactly.
Go to the hospital.
And the same thing applies to mental health, going to see those mental health professionals alongside praying for that person as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Especially in that situation. It's hard for people to reach out and get help because you think I can just kind of power through it.
Definitely.
But no, we need to get the help we need. We need to get the counseling we need. Sometimes the medication that we need to be able to bring our body back into balance the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now, we were just saying how you've been a priest for many, many years now.
Mm-hmm.
So in your experience, right, what has your experience been talking to parents about the topic of mental health?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think, I think we said before, like sometimes parents can feel like if my kid is struggling with mental health that I failed in some way, and that can be really tough. It's hard, even a child gets sick, parents immediately start to question, oh, did I feed them wrong? Did I do something wrong? Did I keep them up too late? And so it's hard, as kids grow up, they become more and more independent, and it becomes a little hard for parents to let go in that sense. But it's actually the opposite. When somebody we have to try to communicate that, like when somebody is struggling and they're getting help, it's not a weakness, it's a strength. And so when a parent makes a tough decision to help their child get the help that they need, right? That's a great thing. It's a wonderful thing. That's like healthy parenting, right? Mm-hmm. Not trying to go it alone. We're not experts at everything. We can't fix every problem that our kids are going to have. I get it. A kid, when they're riding their bike and they fall down, you want to be there to pick them up, and that's part of it. But we can't fix everything. Sometimes we need to understand that certain things we need to seek help. That we're not in this alone, right? Like you said before, it takes a village, right? And we need to have people on our side. We need to have people that we have around us, whether it be their doctors, their counselors, or who are kind of helping us on that journey to do the right thing, where we're getting the right advice and seeking the help that we need. And we're designed for community. We're not designed to do this alone, and so that's what the church is calling towards and such. That's generally, I would say, like the approach that we tend to take towards parents. In that sense, it's not easy. Mm-hmm. It can be tough for everybody, but we just walk alongside them as they go through these things, helping every parent face the challenges that come their way.
Yeah. When you've talked to parents about it, what's usually the reaction you're getting? Is it more of are you seeing more pushback, or are they kind of like actually getting the chance to listen to you and be like kind of are you seeing them taking a step back and rethinking?
I think one of the benefits that we have as clergy is, one of the things I love about personally being clergy is we have the opportunity to enjoy the trust of a lot of people, the love of a lot of people. I love them, they love me, and we can walk alongside. So I find that, when somebody's going through a tough time, even in the church, like when people go through difficulties, people come to church. The church is a hospital, right? Everybody comes seeking to be mended and spiritually built back up, right? And a lot of times they bring their struggles, they bring their things, and they talk it out, whether it be in the sacrament of confession, whether it be in the different life of the church, or just coming. And so clergy tend to stand as like this kind of front line, if that makes sense, where people will come to us first because they trust us, because that relationship is there. They'll come and bring their struggles to us, right? Mm-hmm. And then we can kind of serve as a bridge to help them get the help that they need. right? Where, okay, I think it'd be good to help somebody, and then kind of refer them into counseling. And because they are their trust for us and their trust for our advice, they can now go and seek the help that they need, whether it be, and so the anxieties that they might feel, the insecurities they may feel, right? Those tend to melt away when we sit and talk, when we sit and kind of get there and get to a place of getting people to where they need to be. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes, sometimes it's, it's just even physical health, right? Sometimes you notice, hey, you see somebody week to week and you notice something's a little bit off. And, I've seen clergy say, well, is everything okay? And then they go, oh yeah. And then they go get checked out, right? The same goes for mental health. You could see people struggling and come and walk alongside them in that. And it's a beautiful place to be. It's partly why I really love being a priest. And I enjoy that. I hold that sacred, that trust that people give me. And I do find that people are when you sit down and talk to them one-on-one, I find that they're very open and receptive to this. It's just hard, sometimes we just got to sit down and have that conversation. And they feel that, because they already feel it inside. I'm overwhelmed, it's too much. And then you come and sit down alongside them, and they're like, oh, okay. And then they already know, they should be nudged a little bit to go in the right direction.
Yeah.
To make that next step. It takes a little courage to do that, so, yeah.
I definitely agree. I think definitely taking that first step to being like, okay, let me go talk to Madison about this real quick. I think that's definitely one of the harder obstacles to go over. Yeah. And like you said, once that happens is usually, I feel like when everything starts to
that's
make
what
sense.
It is, and I love that people give them that trust. And not only that, again, it's not for me to solve everybody's problems. That's not it either. That temptation can be there. Where I feel like that's there. No, not at all. There are, we're taught, when we go through seminary and things like that, okay, there are things that we do, and then things that we need to send people to go to a regular counselor every single week to be able to, if somebody's struggling with an addiction, you plug them into a 12-step program where they have the resources that they're going to need. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And that's really the beauty of that, right? Of us all working together in this place to be able to do that. And we're designed as a community to do that, to be there. And we have the sacramental resources to be there as well. So that is the trusted place that we have as clergy. And the church gives me that trust, right, in my ordination, right, to be able to do that, right? Okay, this person is worthy of your trust. And therefore, and it's humbling for us to be able to be in that spot. It's a big responsibility in that sense.
So what do you think, what progress is left to be made when it comes to understanding mental illnesses in the Christian community?
Yeah, I would say every decade brings new challenges, right? You can see, even what we were talking about earlier in the breakdown of community that we saw in the 1900s, even in America and everywhere, it's kind of, we're moving towards this. It presents new struggles, right? And then when we hit these new things, one good thing is we're becoming more and more aware of the problems. We're not living in denial. We're not just standing there with our eyes shut, things like that. So that's one thing. We're starting to talk about things better. Even you guys doing this interview and this organization existing, it's bringing light to a lot of this. And so that's where we are, right? Every generation is going to have its own struggles that we get through. And we have to face them with courage and try to live healthy, wholesome lives, be able to get to and journey our way towards the kingdom. I think that this is a struggle right now to kind of destigmatize certain things that are there, to get people to reach out for help that they need, to build community because community is lacking, to build healthy, wholesome, building each other up community that is. I think that's the challenge of the day, right? We're seeking help, or we're helping each other out, we're walking hand in hand, and I think that's a good and healthy place to be. So I think that's the challenge, right? And it's not just one generation. It's not just, part of it is we need the elders need the kids need the elders. We all need to be in this community together, journeying towards that. I think that's the challenge of building community today. As people are continually isolating, as people are continually moving into their devices and cutting off from society and other people, the church is calling people to communion, to connection, to community, to communion with God, but in communion with God, community with one another, right? And that's essential.
Mhm.
That's why we gather for the communion. We gather together to be united as a body of Christ, right? That this is everything for us, right? Connection, community, and oneness. And when one suffers, the whole body suffers. When one struggles, the whole body struggles. So you see this, honestly, the best place that you see this, I know, is in the South Asian community. When somebody passes away, you'll see like a funeral happen, and like 1,000 people come for the funeral. Right? The whole community will come and descend upon this family that's going through a tough time and be there for them. We have this weird instinct in kind of even me, growing up in this country, to kind of want to give people space when they're suffering. And I had to fight through that and to get past that. To be like, no, we need to go and sit with people. It's not about what we say. It's not solving the problems. We just sit with people as they go through things. And what's one really beautiful thing that we have in South Asian culture, that people, when people struggle, they come together. They're there for each other. They stock the fridge. They're there. They show up day in, day out to sit and talk, right, and be there. That's communion. That's community. That's the church. That's the way it was designed to be. That's what God desires for us, because we're all in this journey together, journeying towards the kingdom, walking in one way, all supporting one another to get there. So,
yeah, no, I've seen that, firsthand. Last time I went to India, actually, we went to a funeral, and it's just like crowds of people,
Yeah.
and then, it was one of our family members, and even after, it's just, of course, our close family is all there, but even like the neighbors, everyone, they're there. They're just talking with the family, and for a second, you wouldn't think you were just at a funeral, because the whole community is there trying to make you feel better, sitting. That's definitely
it's a beautiful example of that. I'm really glad you had that experience, right? Because day in, day out, they're there.
Yeah.
They plant themselves, and they're like, okay, this is what it is. And that's something that, grief needs to be expressed. It needs to be talked out. It needs to be and that's part of it. And just sitting with somebody as they go through a tough time, whatever it be.
Definitely. So for the next question, this is a little bit of it's a deeper question, so we can take it by a couple parts. In what ways can our faith directly intervene in mental health issues? And I guess a better way to word it is, how is our mental health and our faith intertwined?
Yeah, it goes back to body, mind, and soul. Right? We're all in that. It's who we are. We need to work on all aspects of that. But not only that, we come and we worship and we come to church. We're here. One beauty about coming to church and being here for so long is just disconnecting from all your devices, disconnecting from everything that's kind of distracting you, and the beauty of there. And there's a lot of goodness in that. Especially for kids, I notice. But also just this whole journey, even like the sacrament of confession. People coming and bringing their struggles and not being alone in that. A lot of people struggle with sin and the cycle of sin and falling back into sin over and over and over again because they don't have somebody there. And confession is just like somebody who's a little bit further down the road, just guiding you, and helping you to get to walk that path, that we're not alone in our struggles. And that's how we break cycles. Right? Especially cycles of sin, of being able to talk it out, right? And be there and confess and receive forgiveness, right? From God, right? To have that said, instead of just, everything just being in my own mind and me questioning all that as well. And so it all plays into this, right? It plays into my mental health, it plays into my physical health, it plays into my spiritual health as well, that we're growing towards this. Even the practice of fasting that we have. It's an important thing, of me denying, myself the bacon cheeseburger, right, for the sake of a higher good, of being able to say no to something that, for my physical, that gives me physical pleasure in that sense, for the sake of my spiritual growth. Fasting is a beautiful thing. Vigil, staying up and reading the Psalms, and praying. These things are good and healthy for us. Body, mind, and soul. It all interacts. It's all part of that. Our Lord Jesus Christ, you notice so many times where he visited his disciples at the end, after they've been up all night, and after, even sometimes when they're frustrated, even all that as well. And they didn't catch any fish that whole night, right? Then he comes and he says one more time on the right side of the boat, right? And this is where they see. This is where now they see the beauty of what the Lord is, right? Because sometimes we have to be a little bit physically exhausted to be able to kind of let go of the thoughts, to let go of those things, to be able to see, to get some spiritual clarity of knowing what God's plan is. It's in those unexpected moments that the Lord comes in and reveals himself to us in those situations.
So, one thing for us here in MHISA is whenever Ravi and Aaron, recruited me, we were talking about how we have it set up, at least in SECO, which is the South Asian Community Engagement and Outreach sector of MHISA. We're kind of split up into our own, religious communities, right? And one thing I think that all of us kind of agreed on was, a lot of the times there's that separation between, here's my faith, and this is what church teaches, and then here's mental health, what the kind of like the Western world, I guess we could say, kind of talks to us about, right? So I definitely, one of our goals now, in doing so with this interview is, kind of showing people we have to marriage the ideas of mental health and our faith together. So I guess you kind of already gave one.
You're right. That does come up a lot. Where you have this, almost like this wall that's there, where sometimes people are afraid. They want to keep everything separate, right? And I get it. I understand it's part of the foundation of this country too, as well. But we can't do that. We are, like I said, we're body, mind, and soul. We all interact. It's all part of everything, right? And so there should not be a division between the mental health professional and the spiritual leader. Do you get the idea? Or the spiritual life, things like that. Not only that, there has to be an interaction. There has to be this feeling, okay, if I notice somebody struggling, I need to be able to refer them to somebody in the mental health profession who can help them out, right? And we have to be able to work hand in hand. When we work in silos, there's only so much progress you can make, right? And that's true. That's it. I'm glad you guys are working on that, especially working on building that bridge. That we don't want. We need to be, all working together to build wholesome, healthy people. You know what I'm saying? Encouraging people to growth. In that sense.
So for us, on the Christian community side, I have me and my two other co-leaders, Steffi and Nitish, back in Austin. So we were talking about how, we definitely should start, we want to incorporate, parts of the Bible and parts of our faith into that. So I guess you kind of already talked about one example, but one of my other questions, you kind of got me there early. What other lesson, I guess you could say, from Jesus that we see in our teachings, can we relate to the topics of mental health?
Yeah. When we look at our Lord Jesus Christ and what he's done for our salvation, becoming just like one of us, even he went through mental anguish. Even that moment when he's praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's struggling in that moment, or he's praying, and there's a lot of anguish in that. So much so that he starts to sweat blood. And we know from science that to be at that level where you're sweating blood is an extreme form of anguish, because there's a lot weighing on him in that moment, right? And part of that is understanding how much God loves us, that he would take on that much for us. He'd become just like us, go through everything that we went through, that we go through in our lives, and take all of that on, right? Even death on the cross, right? That he goes ahead of us, that he, when I die, I'm a sinner, right? I deserve it in some sense, right? But the sinless one, the one who didn't deserve anything, the one who just gave his life for us, but voluntarily takes on the cross, takes on suffering for our sake, that he might give us life, that he might liberate us from death, that he might liberate us from sin. It's part of that. We worship a God who knows what we go through, and who's been through what we've been through, and that's part of it. But we follow that same path. And he's there to help us with this, help us to walk through this. The peace that I have in my life comes from God, right? At its core, right? I don't generate it myself. I don't expect it from the people around me, right? It comes from God, and it overflows, and then I share it with other people. Make sense? Whether it be love, whether it be the unconditional love that God gives us and we share with other people, the peace that surpasses understanding they receive, we share it with other people, and that's critical to Christian faith. And it's not easy. We see Peter struggle. Like he struggled a lot. He went through a lot. But even when he messed up, even when he made a mistake, the key difference is he went back. He kept going back to the Lord who loves him, and the Lord received him. Right? Peter, do you love me? Right? And this is that beautiful moment of reconciliation. Right? Where Jesus gives him that another chance. Right? And that's part of it. Right? We see in the disciples people who struggle. We see in the people in Scripture people who struggle. Imperfect people that God loves perfectly and helps him to walk this path. But God loves everybody, right? And we as a church, every individual and the whole church's community, we're all in this journey together. God pours out his love upon us. That gives us everything that we could possibly need to reach, back into full communion and connection and wholeness, the way we're designed to be. In that sense.
No, yeah, I agree, and I think, kind of like I said earlier, definitely like one of the things that I think our community has done best, or that we've taken from our faith and from our religion is the community aspect, right, of being there for everyone. I think that's definitely like the one thing that we definitely have nailed on the head, I think. So, I guess
community is an important part of our faith.
Definitely.
We're not called to just live by ourselves. It's not just me and God, right? God's given me community. He's given people around me that I'm called to be, part of it and that as well. So
Nacha, when you've, in your experience as well, so whenever someone's come up to you and said, Acha, I'm going through stuff, I'm going through this, that, what is like that first piece of advice, I guess, what's your number one piece of advice you would give to someone who came up to you?
Really, I think, whatever the struggle that somebody's going through, the most important thing we do is just walk alongside them, and just listen and just see what's happening, what's going on. It's not always about providing answers. Even sometimes I might have an answer. We want to hold back because there's sometimes where people need an answer, right? It's in the midst of the confusion and stuff. But sometimes they just need to be like guided a little bit because it's already there, right? And when we can figure it out ourselves, it's better, right? It's hard. Like some lessons we learn in life, even mistakes that we make. I remember when I was a kid, those old electric stoves back in the day, the coil ones. I remember like my parents telling me, "Don't touch the stove; it's hot." I was like, "It's not hot; it's black. If it was hot, it would be red, right?" And so I was like, "See, it's not hot." Do you get the idea? And I got the burn marks of like the coil like on my hand. My parents were very loving, very kind. They came and they took care of the wound and didn't yell at me about it. But, and that's there. Sometimes, we make mistakes, and sometimes we have to learn that on our own. And it's painful as a priest to watch people learn sometimes these lessons. You want them to choose the healthy thing, but sometimes that's there. But sometimes struggles, they just need a little bit of guidance and help. Sometimes, they need to figure it out themselves. And it's kind of like it's hard to kind of navigate that, to be able to know what's happening in that given situation, and help people to find the resources that they need to be able to get to build stronger in that sense as well. So I don't know if that answers your question. I kind of took it.
Sorry.
But yeah.
So it's definitely more situational.
Yeah, everything's situational. Every person is unique. Every situation is unique, right? And sometimes people just need to be heard and to be, okay, I'm struggling with this, and then we talk through that and see where things are. The most important thing that anybody can do, you have a friend who's going through a tough time, the most important thing you do is just plop yourself down and just listen. Definitely. Right? There's an instinct in all of us where we want to solve the problems of the people we care about. The most important thing you do is just sit down and just listen. And listen to what's being said. Listen to what's not being said underneath it too. What somebody's really going through in that sense.
I'm going to ask you for another piece of advice. So what is your advice for parents who have children that are affected by mental health issues?
Yeah, I think that, I know there's a feeling, there's a defensive, there's okay, what did I do wrong? I failed as a parent. No. Like, just those thoughts will be there, set them aside, think about, okay, my kid is facing a struggle. They're going through something. How can I best help them? How can I come best walk alongside them, right? How can I help them get the help that they need? How can I, and that's really what we want to do. Sometimes the kid who falls off the bike needs to be picked up. Sometimes you just need to walk alongside them and just be like, are you okay? Do you need help? Right? Listen, and sometimes they'll just get up, pick up their bike, and walk, There are things sometimes we can't help, sometimes we have to let them, just encourage them, help them to find the resources they can to be able to navigate. And they're going to need that, because you're not always going to be there as a parent. You're not going to be there the rest, every step of, and so you can't. It's just impossible, so you have to be able to help them get to a place where they can find the help that they need. The most important thing that I would say is you want to help them have the anchors in life that if they drift off to things, that's going to bring them back, right? Whether it be their faith, whether it be reaching out for help, whether it be just the ability, the values that they're going to need. And that's the job of parenting. Just help them, develop those values, help them place those anchors that, whatever comes their way, that they're going to be able to face those challenges and meet them and overcome them.
All right. No, yeah. I mean, I'm not a parent, but I bet that's great advice. So then, what do you say? So what should parents be doing to improve the overall mental well-being of their children in general?
To improve the mental health of their children.
The overall mental well-being of their child.
Mental well-being.
So kind of like in day-to-day life.
Yeah. It depends on the age, but I think every child needs connection. Every child needs somebody come alongside them and just listen to them. The best thing a parent can do is just hear what they're going through, not solve their problem, just come alongside them. And I think helping them build kind of this network around them of healthiness and wholeness, right? Good friendships, good mentors in the community and things like that. And fundamentally faith, right? You have that relationship with God. You know that God will be able to take care of them. If they're connected with God, whatever comes in life, they're going to be able to, God will help them through it. Makes sense? That's the fundamental there. But I think that's part of it is, helping them learn to talk it out, helping them learn to seek help when they need it, encouraging them in that sense as well, that they're not alone in their struggle and they don't have to solve every problem by themselves. I think that was something that overall well-being, whether it be physical, mental, spiritual health, it applies to all of those, right? When it comes to that.
Definitely, I know. I feel like when talking to my friends and talking to just other people in the South Asian community as well, the Christian community especially as well, we definitely, as my generation, we did not have to struggle. We did not struggle as much as our parents' generation did. Yeah. We didn't pack up, leave our home, and go to a completely new country, and try to make a living for our, kids or soon-to-be kids, So I think one thing, that I have heard when it comes to that kind of disconnect between the parents and kids, sometimes it's like, parents went through a struggle 10 times worse than maybe what we're going through. Yeah. So they're like, you're fine. Like, you didn't have to walk through mountains to get to school. Like, I did. Yeah. Or like, you didn't have to pack up and go. So I feel like that's definitely that one disconnect I've noticed as well.
I think it's really great that you appreciate the struggle of the previous generation and everything they went to and how hard that must have been. I'm going to counterpoint that on the other side too for the parents, because yes, you struggled through a lot, right? Yes, you took a big risk coming to this country, a big leap of faith and such, but God was with you in that struggle. God helped you. Every challenge you met, you were able to overcome and to make it to the next step and to make the next step. And don't take, sorry. I think there's a temptation as parents to want to pave the way for their kids and keep them from struggling. But, there's beauty in the struggle too. There's, not that you want them to struggle, but don't take that away either, right? For the parents is, we learn courage by facing adversity. We learn, sometimes we get knocked down, right? And that's okay. But we have to be able to learn how to get back up. And the resources I have that are going to help me get back up. Make sense? And I think that needs to be there as well, right? Sometimes, virtue is built in adversity, in struggle, right? In temptation. Without temptation, there's not going to be, you're not going to build virtue, right? You're not going to build these things. And that's part of it is, as a parent, you don't want to alleviate all the struggle. You don't want to take away that. You want to help them, guide them so that they can overcome that and they get to that place and such. And so it's both. I'm super happy that the younger generation is appreciative of the struggles of the older generation, but I want the older generation to also to allow the younger generation to just struggle, because when they do, they get to own the victory too. Mm-hmm. When you allow them to struggle and then accomplish that, then it's there's a sense of self-confidence, there's a sense of boost, there's a sense of like, oh man, not only that, you let them struggle a little bit, they're going to push, they're going to pray, they're going to see God working in their lives, and then you see what I'm saying, they're going to understand the faithfulness of the Lord, and they're going to take a greater step the next time, and a bigger step, and a bigger leap, and a bigger leap. And so I think that's important. I want the kids to be able to have that ability, right? To make those same courageous steps that the other generation once did as well.
No, definitely. And I feel like around this topic as well then comes the, I don't want to say complaint, but the main thing we do hear from more of our generation as well. It's like, our parents went through so much, yeah. then you get sometimes you get the idea of, oh, they're dismissing, like, oh, like, your struggles are nothing. Like, I did this, you know. So.
Yeah, we should never compare struggles. That's a tough thing. Even like I'm going through a tough time, and you look at somebody else going through an even tougher time. That does not mean that I'm not going through a tough time. Do you get the idea? It's like, we don't compare struggles. We don't measure that. We just, this is what is in front of me. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's going to expect, like, a toddler who's learning to walk to suddenly, sprint a 100-yard dash, right? That, and not only that, like, for that toddler, that is the struggle in that moment, right? And yeah, great. And they're going to overcome it. We're going to celebrate them because that's a big victory, right? And it's a beautiful thing when they take their first steps, right? It's an amazing thing, and that's how everything is going to be in life, right? Not to like minimize that even, but every struggle is an important struggle, right? Everything that we go through is important and should be treated that way. And we don't want to compare. Mm-hmm. We don't want to minimize. We don't want to dismiss anything that anybody else is going through. But again, like I said, come and listen. Right? Part of it is we have this instinct as parents, like anybody, like somebody like a kid falls down and scrapes their knee, right? Our automatic instinct is you're okay, shake it off, you'll be fine. Does it make sense? You're fine. I'm not fine, right? Like this hurts. Like it's not okay. So we come alongside and say, like we don't want to dismiss that, or we don't want to distract from that. It's even built into our culture. Have you ever noticed, like, we do this, like, when you're a kid and you went to the doctor's office and they give you a shot. And then right after that, they give you a lollipop. That's not healthy. Do you get the idea? Because what we just did there is we created a coping mechanism. It's, oh, I'm in pain. To distract me from the pain, candy. Do you get the idea? No, it's, oh, you're in pain. That must really hurt. Right? That should be the healthy response, right? And the way out, if you want to, don't get me wrong, like don't deny the kid a lollipop, get a lollipop, but not because of the pain. Does that make sense? That's an unhealthy coping mechanism, and we need to build healthy ones, where I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to feel the pain, and I'm going to share that with somebody else, and somebody else is going to listen to that. So.
Okay, so I guess the next question I'll ask you: how can people dealing with their own mental health issues find solace in the church? Like, instead of directing their situational anger towards God?
It is okay at times to be upset with God. God can handle it, When my kids are young, let's say, it was time to, they got really upset at me because that happened. Let's say like my kid was like crawling on the floor and she went up and picked up a power cord and bit it. Do you get it? And I'm going to take that out of her mouth and she's going to get upset because why are you stopping me from doing what I want to do, right? And she might cry, right? I can see that would be dangerous for her, and that's why she doesn't understand that. And so sometimes, yeah, I have to take that away. Do you get the idea? And that may cause her a little bit of pain, but the difference is when with a kid is they don't run away, right? When they're going through something, they run towards their parent and hold on to them. They might be upset at me. They might even hit me. They might even, grab onto me or scratch me. Do you get the idea? But they hold on. And me as a parent, like, I just sit there and comfort them and be with them, right? Because out of my love for them, I understand what they're going through. Oh, you really wanted that and I had to take it away from you. I understand, right? God is the same way, right? The key is that, yeah, you go through a tough time. You're struggling. Sometimes you even get angry at God. Sometimes, situationally things may not have gone the way you expected it. Or sometimes we feel great loss, right? Sometimes we lose somebody we love. Well, it's okay. Sometimes we get upset at God, right? Don't run away from God. Run towards him. And he will hold on to you. He'll comfort you. Say, I know. And he'll walk with you and help you get through that, right? It's not, in our relationship with God, it's not about the absence of difficulty in life or taking away that, right? The struggle. It's about God journeying with us in the midst of the struggle, walking with us. And that's part of it, right? That's love. That's what people do when they love one another. And that's how much God loves us, that he'll walk with us as we go through these things. And so I think that's there. Not only that, when it comes to your mental health, things like, again, body, mind, and soul, right? Like, we want to be strengthening all areas of our life. We want to be growing. We want to be healthy. So, come to church, be here, be part of this, right? Sometimes perspective, you know what I mean? I remember when I was in college, you can get so zoomed in. You're working on a project for like 40 hours straight. You haven't slept. You haven't done all these things. I remember once where I was like, okay, well, I got to go to church. You know what I mean? I've been up all night. I'm going to go to church. And suddenly, I remember teaching Sunday school and all these like goofy kids going nuts and things like that. And worshiping and standing in the presence of God, the omnipotent God who has been there my whole life, who has journeyed with me, who has answered all these prayers. And you stand there and you present those requests to the Lord. You present your heart to the Lord. And then you go back into the situation and everything's different. Perspective is totally different. That stress that you're feeling, you're so zoomed in looking at this, you're so overwhelmed. Suddenly you're like, okay, hold on. You know what? There's a bigger picture. Life's good, right? Kids are goofy, right? Things are there. There's more. There's things that I'm not seeing. And so sometimes we just we step out of that. We need to be here. We need to be a part of this. We need to and stand in the presence of God. And suddenly our perspective is going to shift. And suddenly solutions that we didn't even imagine we start to see that. We start to see different paths. Sometimes we feel trapped and there's only two doors I can go through. No. You stand in the presence of God and you see this and the omnipotence of God and you see the all-lovingness of God and you see, okay, hold up. He's provided me so many other paths, right? And we take it. And it's an important part of our spiritual life. It's an important part of our mental health and it's an important part of our physical health. It's not everything. Do you get the idea? Let's not be confused that. But it's an important part of it. Body, mind, and soul, strengthening and growing and becoming healthy.
So then, what are some ways, church leadership could foster better mental health practices in the church?
Yeah, I think talking about it more and more, I think it needs to be things that are part of it. Resources, like we need to be able to have readily available resources. I love it when churches host like 12-step meetings and things like that at their church and things like that. Comfortable places. It's hard to navigate these things because sometimes, like, we as a church cannot provide mental health services in that kind of sense, right? It's hard because, like, we'll have mental health professionals in the church who are part of the church, but they can't technically serve other people in the church because we're all part of this community and different, regulations and things like that as far as not being able to, you're not supposed to be having a client with when you have another type of relationship with them. Does it make sense? Like, you don't go to the church picnic with your counselor. Do you get the idea? So that's okay. That's totally fine. But we need to be able to build resources where we're able to plug people in. You know what I'm saying? Where we can, and we need to make more effort at that, to be able to, the church should be able to have a list of people, like, to be able to refer to. Well, you're struggling with this, you know, here, why don't you check this out? And it's hard to building those networks up and doing that. There's a lot of good resources out there right now. There's, in the Orthodox community, we have, there's a mental health task force that one of our church members works as a director of, Sangeeta, and she, and in that you can find a directory of mental health professionals. You can find resources, you know, throughout the country that you can find all different types of help, mental health professionals that you may need, and so that's a really cool. We have a lot of resources that are there, and, but these are things, you know, encouraging these things and helping these resources out there, making sure that people know that these things are available to them. I think that's something that's important.
I agree. I think it's a two-part thing, you know, of, okay, first let's, you know, agree, okay, we need the resources in the first place.
Yeah.
Creating the resources, but then creating them and having them, you know, sit and maybe catch dust, isn't it as well? It has to be marketed heavily, you know, I think even
the
about
awareness that the resources are there.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, I think
that's I think the weakness that we have. The resources are there, but the awareness of this that is tough.
Definitely. I think I remember, you know, we had this conversation, I think when I was first asking you to do this interview, then I think you had told me about, you know, Sangeeta Chichi and all the stuff she's doing with the diocese, and I was like, why, you know, when I went back home, I was like, wait, why hadn't I heard about that before?
Yeah.
You know, I think, like you said, I think that is the number one weekness, so I think it is something that we do need to work on.
You know, it's not just, there's a lot of wonderful people who've been working hard, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Department of Mental Health, Ted Jachin leads, and then there's, you know, there's a lot of work, the good work that they're doing to provide resources. They provide a lot of resources to us as priests and pastors of the community that we can now use, and things like that. It takes consistently a lot of hard work, and that's hard because, you know, the people who are working hard on this are all stretched very thin. You know, we're all, you know, just doing the best that we can. But God willing, you know, we'll get there step by step as more and more, you know, the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. And so now that more and more people are coming in, and you know, we'll be able to kind of manage the workload a little bit better over time. And I think that, God willing, I think we'll get there in the coming years.
Definitely. So I have my last question for you. I think it is kind of a bigger one as well. So how do you recommend, you know, a young adult or adolescent approaches a conversation with their parents about their own mental health?
I think we don't need to wait for the conflict to start to expressing our true feelings. A lot of times people will just hold everything in, and then in a time of conflict kind of explode everything out, right? What we want to do is proactively go sit down in a calm moment, right? Over coffee, over tea, and just share, just say, and, you know, and say, and not come in with attacking, not coming in you. Say, I, you know, I'm going through this. You know, sharing struggles and things like that as well, right? And that's what we need to be. We need to, that's the best way, is just to come when things are calm, things are great, and things are not great, but, you know, come in and, you know, oftentimes wait for things to be tense in order to make a movement. You know, we want to be able to make healthy movements and healthy steps, you know, when we're healthy, or calm, communicate, right? And then we can have a good conversation about things. Like you and I are going to have a wonderful conversation about this, because we sat down, we carved out time, and we had this conversation, right? We planned it, do it that way. We didn't wait for the next crisis to happen and suddenly start talking about it. Like, we want to be proactive with things in life, where we're getting out and we're having these conversations. And every teenager, you just sit down and talk to your parents and say, you know, you can even preempt it and say, Mom, Dad, I love you. I don't want you to solve my problem, I just want you to listen. Got it? And they'll be okay. And then just come in and just start sharing. And I'm kind of going through this and whatever it be. And then it's a great thing. You know, parents, you know, they love their kids, right? I think don't sell them short. I think they will. I think they'll pleasantly surprise you most of the time. To be able to just have a listen. It's good to preempt it in that sense as well. So, but don't come out combative and things like that. But come out and just say, hey, this is what I'm going through, and struggling with this, and, you know, in that sense as well. So, and if you really need help with that, again, if you need any help with all of that, call your achin in, call your clergy member in, call like your trusted aunt or uncle to come and just sit alongside you. Somebody that they trust, that, that they can come along and help you with that conversation. We would love to be there. We'd love to be part of that. So that's what we're here for.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Achin. Like you said, us here, having this conversation is taking the first few steps, right? And not just after a crisis happens or anything like that. These need to be like normal conversations that we're having. So I want to thank you so much for carving out your time to come and talk to me and, help us here with our mission and with MHISA. So
thank you, and thank you for the organization. Thank you everybody who's been a part of this. I really appreciate your mission. I appreciate everything you're doing, and all the different faith traditions that are coming together to work on this. It's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. Keep going. Keep doing what you're doing, and change happens step by step. Just sometimes a small course correction produce a long-term change, right? So incremental steps, and this is, it's beautiful. It's really wonderful, and I'm honored that you asked me to be a part of this, and I wish you all the best. Okay?
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.